Greetings and welcome to Spin a Yarn Live, the Tea Time Book Club and Crafting Circle.
I'm not crafting today. I'm too tired.
Too tired?
I'm too tired.
So, quick bit of follow-up from last episode.
Yeah.
I used the word compunctions.
Uh-huh.
And it is a word.
Oh.
But it does not mean what I thought it meant.
You keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think
It did not mean what I thought it meant.
Oh dear.
It means misgivings.
Ah.
So while Skeeve may have additional misgivings, that's not the word I was trying to use. So we were both right.
Okay.
Or both wrong. Let's see. Today we are talking about iRobot. Ignore this cover.
Yeah, we couldn't find like the original cover from the, from the original book. I guess the movie popularized it enough that it just made sense to put it on the cover, which is actually hilarious. I had never read the book before, but I had seen the movie, and I liked it just fine. It's not a great movie, don't get me wrong. But it's got Will Smith in it, and it's hard to not like Will Smith, because Will Smith.
Because Will Smith.
Prince of Bel-Air and all that. But yeah, it really is nothing at all like the movie.
Yeah.
The only similarities is that
There are robots.
Well, there are robots, and you've got Dr. Susan Calvin.
Oh, is she in the movie?
She's in the movie.
Okay.
She's not this character, but that's the doctor that they use. It's Dr. Calvin, and in their defense, they didn't really make her a love interest. Which is, if you read the book, she's just so. Oh, so anyway, the tea.
Yeah, let's before we dive in.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, I'm just doing your standard Twinings English breakfast tea. I understand that it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but you know what? I don't care. I really like this tea. It's just your standard black tea.
Anytime is breakfast time.
Indeed. This is why I'm eating a bagel. I haven't eaten today, except for a apple juice or an applesauce packet. So.
Yeah, because you were putting off reading this book.
It's not that I didn't like the book. I suppose I liked it after getting into it a little bit. I did not care for the first short story. It's a series of short stories, if you're unfamiliar. It is a series of short stories. Oh, spoiler alert. If you haven't read the book, of course we're assuming that you have, but yeah, we're going to tell
standard
you
spoiler.
all the things.
And if you read the blurb on this and it says, "One man saw it coming," there's no such man in this book.
No.
And there's no such it that came.
That's not true. In the final short story, in the very last bit of it, it's kind of like, it's like 4 or 5 major machines, or that are just termed the machines.
Yep.
Control essentially the Earth's economy. So it controls, how much yeast gets produced and how many building materials gets produced
and what the job market looks like.
Job market and all this stuff. So, and there are these it seems like it's hinted at that it's possible these machines are moving towards the idea of controlling the human population and controlling where people work and controlling if there's an individual who's near them that they think might pose a threat, they do something in some very underhanded, you'd never suspect the machine of doing it because it's so subtle.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. So, which I found interesting. So, the series of short stories lead up to this one story, and it's from the perspective of Dr. Calvin, who's giving an interview to a young journalist who's asking about all this stuff, and she's, I think they say 82 or 83, so she was there from the beginning, and she saw it all first happen.
Yep. From the beginning in the 80s.
Right.
So most of the story takes place in our past now.
Mm.
Which is interesting. always love catching up to science fiction. Because, yeah, like Terminator. When was Terminator's... what's that called?
When was the future where the Terminator came from?
Yeah. Is that like 2050s or something?
I don't recall.
Okay. There's a lot of older science fiction that we've surpassed, and there's a chart online that is actually like a calendar of when all these things are happening.
Oh, yeah.
It just...
Yeah, I've seen that. Well, this is when we should have colonized Mars, according to Total Recall.
Yeah.
You know, don't jump up on my bagel. Yeah. You saw him. He was about to, you guys.
He was about to.
He was gonna.
Because he's a good boy.
He's a good boy.
But yeah, so this was written in, what, 50?
This was published in December 5th, 1950.
Yep.
I was curious, because everything started in 1983 or whatever it was. So I was like, 1983? So I went back to see when iRobot was initially published by Isaac Asimov. And it was in 1950. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
That makes a little bit more sense.
So he definitely placed Calvin's, birth at 30 years in his future.
Yeah. That's my bagel.
We did have quite a huge...
technological boom. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but did not lead to...
AI.
Robots, yeah. In fact...
Go away.
We're still kind of taking...
Go away.
Cautious steps.
Hey. Hang on, I'm having a kitty crisis, you guys. Oh, okay.
Hi.
You saw he's a big cat. Alright. So, here's my first set of notes. So in a lot of ways, Dr. Calvin is more or less the main character because she's telling all these stories to the reporter. So while she might not have actually been present at each of the situations, she has received the full report.
Yeah.
Because she had to. She is the robo-psychologist of the U.S. Robotics Mechanical Man Corporate Division, whatever it's called. So, of course, it's written in the 1950s. So, the young journalist, who is a man, refers to Dr. Calvin as a girl. She's 83 years old. And he calls her a girl. Because this is written in the 50s by a man.
Yeah.
So, I made a little note here. After having read the entire book, I'm less bitter. But I did make a little note here reading the first short story. Okay, we need to step away from books written by old dudes from the 60s and 70s, and apparently 50s, after I looked up this. So, the first story I did not like, for a number of reasons. First story centers around a robot named Robbie and his relationship to the little girl that he was essentially a nursemaid to. So in some ways we're following a timeline of situations like in the book, in the current time of the book, which I'm not sure was ever outright said. She referred to being a certain age when certain events happened, but I didn't bother to do the math to figure out exactly what year we're in. Close to the year 2100. We're probably in the 2070s. I would guess.
Yeah.
2070s or 2060s, something like that. So when robots were first kind of created, they were used to do jobs like being nursemaids. So we focus on this one family where the daughter, who at the time of the story is 8 years old, and I guess to help out around the house or whatever, the mom bought, or the dad bought, the robot to help because he's always at work. Sundays are like his one day off. He often works late, stuff like that. Stuff that you would expect to happen when you're trying to work on a one-income household in a non-one-income economy kind of thing. Because the woman was still expected to stay at home having a kid, despite it being the amazing future of 1983. So they weren't really far off.
Yeah.
In that aspect, Mr. Asimov wasn't really that far off. But so the situation is that they think, the mom in particular, thinks that the daughter is becoming way too attached with Robbie. And you can see Yes, she is way too attached to the robot. She does love it as a friend, and she won't play with other friends unless kind of pushed into doing so. She won't play with, human kids and stuff like that. So, but the way the mom approaches the problem is really bitchy, and really another word that I won't use because a lot of people don't like that word, but she is. And so, I didn't like this story. I didn't like the way women were portrayed in this story. I didn't like the way even the husband was portrayed in this story. It was just a really bad representation of a family unit.
And it definitely felt a lot like old 50s sitcoms. Not quite sitcom, but those kind of movies back then. The family structure of back then. It's like he just took it from the big screen. Which is
He
bad.
should have taken it from the Addams Family. Because if you ever watched the original Addams Family, which is from I don't know what year, I have to tell you. The movies are good too, the more recent movies from the 90s, but I'm talking about the Addams Family, like the original series. Which was odd in of itself because Morticia, the wife, was intelligent but sexy and also was able to kind of run the house and stuff like that. But Gomez, her husband, wasn't some blundering idiot. He was also intelligent. He was very suave. He was still head of the household, but if his wife had a suggestion, he listened every single time. So it was a very unheard of structure, the Addams Family, the original Addams Family. Which is why the movies are also very good. I really like the movies. If you don't like them, I don't care. They're really awesome. But anyway, so I wrote down a couple quotes that I didn't much care for, such as the clumsier and more scrupulous sex, referring to women. I have a
Was
note
that to women or about men?
No, women.
The clumsier?
No, they're talking about women. They're talking about the plan that the wife came up with to get rid of the robot. Which, I can understand the worry of your child getting way too attached to to something that could conceivably live with her entire life. Now, in the book, they do talk about how the robots eventually will reach, an obsolete state. So eventually the robot would effectively die.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, why don't you just let it run its course, and when the robot passes, she'll be very sad naturally, but as a natural death, she'll get over it.
Though we do see near the end of the book that she's 15 before robots are no longer allowed on Earth, and she has to give Robbie up. So
it's not that robots are no longer allowed on Earth. It's at the end of that particular story, Dr. Calvin mentions how eventually the robots were all recalled, because newer, better robots were being put out. So they were recalled, but they weren't, that the law being passed of them not being allowed on Earth hadn't been done yet. Although maybe I misinterpreted. But she was 15, and as Dr. Calvin points out, she was probably better suited to deal with the idea of not having this robot in her life anymore. But I have a little note here. Arrogant bitch, Gloria's mom. Because she is. What does it say? Yeah,
so, of course, the non-speaking models were put out of date by the speaking models, but most of the world governments banned robot use on Earth for any purpose other than scientific research between 2003 and 2007.
Okay.
So that's when Gloria had to give up Robbie when she was 15.
But, again, at a teenage level, a little bit more things are happening when you're a teenager.
Right. Which
one would hope that her interest in robots would have moved beyond that, and that as a 15-year-old, other things are happening. So, other things would have taken precedent. And also, eventually you do grow out of your old toys, if you want to consider him a toy. But, they try to get her to... Okay, well, not they, the mom.
Yeah.
The dad is not vehemently opposed to getting rid of Robbie, but he seems to see a more psychological impact that would happen if they were to just get rid of Robbie, because Gloria loves him. She absolutely loves him as a friend, as a confidant, as all these things. So he does not see the merit in getting rid of the robot. Okay? Now, on the one hand, you could look at that as seeing as the husband was being lazy and didn't want to have to deal with it, and didn't want to have to deal with what he knew was going to happen, i.e. Gloria getting upset and all that stuff. But on the other hand, he gets so angry with his wife that I can't help but think he actually has more of the interest of the kid, of Gloria's mental state. He has a more interest in that than his wife does. Like, his wife is concerned. They talk about how they live in the country, and she has to go down to the village to do grocery shopping and stuff. And people are talking. They're talking, they're whispering and talking to her like, oh, you still have that robot?
Yeah.
You still let that robot play with your kid? Like, all this stuff. So the wife is more concerned about her appearance outside.
Yeah.
Which I'm just like, I hate everything.
Yeah, I think this was just like one of the first experimental stories he ever wrote. Because some of my stories, the first ones I've written, are not very good or well done either. Like that Wizard's Trade one, if it went out as is, there would be another white guy being oppressive sort of thing, even though that's against what I was trying to do.
No.
But yeah, I never remember the story with Robbie. I always thought that the one on Mercury is the first story. Yeah, every time I think about the book.
Yeah, well, no. The story with Robbie is the first one. And everyone, in the end, everything turns out okay, but there are the points in the book where you're reading it and you go, oh my god, is Gloria going to die? Or, oh my god, is Robbie going to die? And all this stuff. And you're trying to think, well, what did the wife even do to Robbie? And later she returned him to the store, as it were. So it's not like she killed it or broke it intentionally and threw it out or anything, which you can't do. On the rules of robotics, you can't just destroy a robot because that's one of its prime directives. It needs to preserve itself. So you got to send it to a... Yeah. Don't jump on my baby.
And something that's said later in the books, or in the short stories, is that all the robots are rented out by the company. You never actually buy a robot, you rent it. Even though that's not made clear in the very first story because, very first story in the world.
Yeah.
But, that was... It was interesting seeing Gloria play with it and her stuff, but it really doesn't connect much to...
It doesn't, but it has to do with why robots are outlawed and are not allowed to do things like take care of children. Yeah. It has to do with that stuff. Yeah,
and just the mistrust that humans have with robots near their living area and children.
Right. Makes sense. So the second story is a little bit more interesting. Oh crap, what's it called? Hi. You've got a paw on my thigh.
Speedy.
Speed. Oh, it's just called Speed?
Yep. Well, no, I don't know what it's called. That's the robot in it.
No, I know that's the robot in it. I was trying to think of the name of the actual
I sectioned it out by robot.
Hi. I got a cat. He's got his paw on my thigh. Okay.
So, without giving a synopsis, play-by-play.
And I didn't give a synopsis or play-by-play in the first one. And Robbie.
What did you think about the problem with Speedy?
I thought it was weird. It was weird because, they send him out to do a job, but the job endangers him, but he was ordered to do it. So he was stuck in this loop. He couldn't not try to do his job, but he couldn't go back having not fulfilled his directive that Powell and Donovan gave to him. So it was weird that the result was a lot like someone being drunk. He started, what did they say? He was singing Gilbert and Sullivan tunes.
Yeah.
Like, he just started singing randomly, and he was running back and forth between where there was a physical danger to him versus where he would have, beyond where he could return, that he would have failed what his masters told him to do. So just back and forth, which I don't understand. I'm not a programmer. Okay? You've seen me craft. I knit. And while my first love was in the chem lab, molecules behave a certain way based on their physical properties and what they want to do based on their electronic charges and their protons and their neutrons and all that jazz. So you can study that, and you can kind of sort of know what's going to happen when you mix things together. But when it comes to programming, why would you send one robot to do this one job that if it fails at this one job for whatever reason, the 2 humans you sent with this robot will die? Because that's what would happen if he was not able to get the energy source that Speedy was after and bring it back to the 2 humans, to Pal and Donovan. They would have died. So why wouldn't you bring some sort of a fail-safe? Why wouldn't you have at least one other robot or something? I don't know. It was just really, really weird, some of the way these stories are set up. Because Pal and Donovan are the testers, right? It's their job to test these new models and make sure they perform the jobs they're supposed to perform without any hiccups, without any bugs in the system, or if there are bugs in the system, identify them and fix them and blah, 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 blah. But why would you make it so that literally their lives depended on this robot being able to perform this core function? And Speedy can't perform this core function, at least not being sent to this particular area he was being sent to, which they realized later and they fixed.
And with the lightest of all commands.
Right. So you tell me, Mr. knows how to program and all this stuff, and why wouldn't they send a backup? Also, why was the
expense?
Fine, but why was the result the robot seemingly getting what we humans would define as drunk and singing Gilbert and Sullivan?
So that one is pretty much it's not actually said, but a lot of the robots don't seem to run off of just a normal iterative program. Because that just can't handle all of the things that robots have to deal with. So it sounds like to me that the robots are running off of some sort of neural network or something similar, very similar to a human brain.
Yeah.
So much so that the primary person in dealing with robots, Susan Calvin, she is not a programmer or a debugger or anything. She is a robo-psychologist. So these programs, these AIs, are definitely so complex that it's not programming anymore, it's psychology. Which you can see being a consequence of improving neural networks and all that kind of stuff. It's something that a lot of programmers out there are treading carefully towards every time there's a new advance. Like even with the neural network that learned how to play Go and beat humans at it, there was still thought, among the scientific community, like, is this the one where consciousness will become an emergent property? Is that how it works? Because we just don't know yet. But if you think about just replacing every neuron we have with an input sensor so it can sense what endorphins or anything else is being placed on the sensor and output an electrical signal the same way our neurons work, and just replace all of our neurons with chips basically that work identically the same way, it's now a machine that has a brain like humans do.
Can you pour me some more tea?
Yeah.
I can't really leave. He's 16 pounds, you guys. He's a big cat.
So in this case...
Ooh, use the thingy. You're going to burn your hands.
They mention in the book that half of the circuits were trying to do one thing, and half the circuits were trying to do another thing. And so the output was not a consistent output, which does happen.
Okay.
Where, like, even if you just think about a number sequence of multiplying by -1, you get 1, -1, 1, -1, 1, -1. You get these two, like, what's the limit of that? There really is no limit because it's divergent.
I'm not asking how it is that the robot got... I mean, yes, I did ask why did the robot get drunk and all that, but my main query is why they wouldn't send some sort of backup.
You have in your neural network two things that are overpowering each other and basically canceling out. So the noise from everything, from all the other things, like if he just happened to think about Sullivan, because I've been working and thinking about something that's not work related.
Right.
So he could have just had like a small thing, and so its paths might lead to like, if you think about output of a neural network between 0 and 1, the two courses of actions might zero each other out, and then you have like a 0.1 sing this Sullivan, which is just random noise in the system, but that's all of a sudden the most powerful thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of probably how it works.
How it works and how he got drunk. But that does not answer my question.
Okay, what's the question?
The question of if something had gone wrong with the robot in any way, shape, or form, which it did, the men would have died. So the only reason that they didn't die, because they, Speedy was late getting back to base or whatever with the energy source that they needed. They couldn't get him back. They didn't know where he was. They didn't know what was going on. So they went down into the mines and found the old robots that had been used first. And they were able to use those robots to get to Speedy, see that something was amiss, and they figured out a solution to get Speedy back. And then to go to... And it was just because of this one particular area that he was having this feedback relay, and he wouldn't complete, but he wouldn't return. So when they sent him to a different source of this energy, he was there and back in like 45 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So, that was all well and good and fine. But it seems to me to be something of a plot hole. Not on Asimov so much as on the U.S. robotics people, that they send 2 engineers, 1 robot. Let's go see if this robot works. But if the robot doesn't work, you are dead.
So, I think a lot of it comes down to, A, all of that was supposed to be routine.
Yeah.
So, but then B, you have these people going in a very expensive way to do things. So, like, if we send scientists to Chernobyl to figure out what's going on, and going there with your radiation suit and like just going into like an office that's near the blast zone. Yeah, there's a lot of radiation. Yeah, it's deadly, but you're just you're just scanning. Nothing should go wrong with that. Whereas if the scan happens to set off something over the top and cause a huge explosion, it's like, yeah, they're in danger.
First, I feel I should mention that it's not like they're in a remote city or anything. They're on Mercury. They're on the planet Mercury.
Which is even more expensive to get stuff to.
It is.
Including humans.
It is. No, I agree. And they talk about how Speedy is a very expensive, he's the new prototype, obviously, as his name is derived from, his name is like...
SPD something.
Right.
1-3, I think.
Yeah, but you say the initials real fast and it sounds like Speedy, so call him Speed. But yeah, they talk about how he's very expensive and everything. But yeah, it's just a weird little thing. And another thing that was bothering me, and that Paul and I have kind of talked about a little bit, is that the situation resolves itself when one of them, I can't remember if it was Donovan or Powell, I don't frankly care, basically puts himself in danger, hoping that the first directive, the first rule of robotics of, you may not do any harm to a human or through inaction have a human come to harm, will override the other 2 laws of preservation and following the order of humans. Hopefully the first rule will override if the human puts himself in enough danger that Speedy will be like, oh no, must save human. So the problem with that, which led to what I kind of thought was both a funny and yet kind of macabre scene, is that the robots that they find to help them are like these big guys. They're like 10 feet tall, and they won't move unless you're on top of them. You have to kind of ride them like a mount. So you kind of sit on top of their shoulders. So he dismounts from the robot, and the robot is like, what are you doing? You know, he's like, I don't understand. And then he's walking into this hazardous area to him, which is basically he's on the surface of Mercury, and there's the sun, and well, what more hazard do you need? And so he's trying to get towards Speedy, because he's trying to be like, if I get close enough, and Speedy sees that I'm in danger, Speedy can very quickly take me to safety. Now, the big lumbering robots are indeed very lumbering. I think they mention something like a max of 6 miles per hour or something like that. Real slow in comparison. So he gets out to an area where he's in a lot of danger, and the large robot is like, you are doing this bad thing. I must help you. And he's like, forgive me for moving, even though there's not someone on top of me, but you need to get out of danger. And then the guy's like, no, you can't save me because you are slow and you'll never get me to safety in time. I need that one too. So he's trying to get closer to everything. So Speedy breaks his loop, and he's like, oh, God, human in danger, must help. So grabs him and runs him back to base where he's safe. But he does get knocked out. And so the other guy, let's just, for the sake of argument, say Powell was the one who went out.
I think Donovan... no, you're right. Powell went out.
Powell went out and came back. And so Donovan is over him when he's regaining consciousness. And he's like, oh, my God. You know, oh, did it work? And he's like, yes, it worked. But Speedy won't get anywhere near you because he's terrified that you're angry with him. And this, like, I could kind of, I don't know why, I could understand more Robbie, who is the nursemaid to Gloria, having this relationship, which was that of kind of you know, of a nanny who's always there. You know, I could get a little bit more behind, I guess, but the idea that the robot felt shame for doing what he was supposed to do, save the human. Well, and then he was afraid.
Ashamed of having gotten caught in that loop.
Right, it was ashamed, but it was just weird. So we were talking about this, about the odd idea, in my opinion, the odd idea of a computer program becoming so advanced that it actually takes on a consciousness as far as, excuse me, having emotions. And that was just kind of weird. And that was the, you know, the second story. And then the next couple of stories revolve around Donovan and Powell. Which at first I was kind of annoyed at, because they're kind of like the Three Stooges minus one of the Stooges. Because they're, I don't know, they didn't come across to me as being very intelligent in terms of thinking logically about a situation, in my opinion. Like, yes, they're engineers. They're meant to know robots and the robotics and all that jazz. But, I don't know. I didn't really like them. I didn't like having to watch them. The most interesting one was... Not Catch That Rabbit. The most interesting one was...
The Lost Robot?
No. The one with Donovan and Powell. The one with the interstellar travel.
Oh, yeah. The brain.
The brain. That was kind of the most interesting, but only because it goes, like, 2001: A Space Odyssey on us. Which, let's face it, after reading it, I can see where 2001: A Space Odyssey, a movie created in the 60s, by the way, got its inspiration for the scene where Dave is going through time and space. Like, I kind of see what's going on. Except 2001: A Space Odyssey kept religion pretty firmly out of it. This, not so much. But that's okay. It was written in the 50s.
Yeah, and it's, I think, supposed to be more the subconscious of the people involved.
Yeah. Because they both saw different things. Both heard and saw different things.
Yeah, no, because the first one, Robbie introduces the first law. Like, yes. Here's how the first law works. And then the second one, Speedy, introduces laws 2 and 3 and how they're kind of ranked, and making a lower one be of vital importance and a higher one be of very low importance could lead to this kind of equilibrium. So it's already showing that, 3 laws, not 100%. And any AI person in modern day does not use the 3 laws of robotics as a baseline, because part of these short stories is showing that that's not a good idea. They're not,
inherently flawed.
They're not sufficient. But a lot of people who do AI know of the 3 laws of robotics, because a lot of it is, no matter what you do, there's going to be ways it goes wrong. And so initially you need to put a lot of thought into how to prevent things from going wrong.
Right.
Like, one of the big groups in AI is trying to get America and other countries to have legal definitions of personhood that involves artificial intelligence, because we've all read enough science fiction that if you have a conscious race, as it were, even if it's a mechanical race, and you treat them as slaves or second-class citizens or all this kind of stuff, or don't give them rights, things go wrong.
Yeah.
And we see that all over the place. The Animatrix.
Yeah, they did a bit on that.
So, yeah, there's definitely a modern group right now, because we don't know when emergent consciousness will come about, if it will come about. It could still be that consciousness has nothing to do with the physical universe. It seems insanely unlikely, because there's energy involved, and energy means part of this universe. So unless somehow we cannot detect that we're warping in energy from another universe, it seems that consciousness comes from just the vast network of neurons we have, and we can already program neural networks. So it's like, it's probably going to become the point where we actually have full AI.
Yeah.
So it's like, can we get some things legal just in preparation?
Straighten some of this out before stuff goes down, because it's going to go down.
Yeah, it's going to go down. Let's treat them nicely to begin with.
Yeah. So probably my 2 favorite stories of the book is actually, even though I was ranting and raving about it, Reason.
Which one is... Oh, that one.
That one with Cutie.
Zealot.
With Cutie.
Cutie. Interesting.
And then... the second to last one with the politician.
Oh, yes. With Byerly.
Yes. I don't remember what it was called. But so... Oh, you know what? Why don't I just go to the table of contents? I'm probably will answer another one.
So what did you like about Cutie story?
Well, evidence. So I liked Reason, and I liked Evidence.
Yep.
Little Lost Robot was kind of fun too, though. So what I liked about Reason is that it's one of those things where something can make you so infuriated, and you can just get so angry. It's kind of like that old trope of 2 people meet each other, and they instantly dislike each other, and they dislike each other so much until they realize, well, it's not like they actually hate each other. In reality, they've actually fallen in love. But, oh my god, they get on each other's nerves so much. So it was kind of like that. I love to rant about it. I love to hate this story.
Okay.
So I hate to love it. So... Cutie is just...
Yeah.
He's so annoying. Like, I sympathize. Like, this was the one story where I really sympathized with Donovan and Powell.
Yeah.
Because usually I don't. Usually I'm like, oh god, they're so annoying. I hate them. But in this one, you can understand the frustration of wanting to punch Cutie in the face. And they would. But if they tried, they'd break their hands. Because he's made of metal. But this weird idea that because of the way, and again, this is a prototype that they're testing out. So again, they're in a situation where if something goes wrong, most likely they will die. until help comes 10 days later, or whatever the time span was. And then, but it's not even that help comes. It's that a transport vehicle comes, and Donovan and Powell get to leave, and then a new guy gets to come in to observe and see what's going on.
Yeah, they were.
Which, by the way, Donovan and Powell were complete jerks and did not mention to the guy that QT has gone a little cray-cray.
I mean, nothing would happen to the guy except he basically is imprisoned because he can't be hurt.
Right. No.
But so he gets imprisoned for his term.
Right, but it's just like, I mean, why?
Yeah, no, they're jerks.
They're jerks. But it's just, it's so infuriating because there's all of this evidence given to this being of logic and reasoning. And it cannot wrap its brain around the idea that humans created it. It thinks that the converter, or the master, as he calls it, of this space station created him. Which is kind of like, well, now wait a minute, it's a converter. It's literally a series of circuits and wires and vacuum tubes. Like that, cutting edge. And it's like, how could it have created you when it doesn't even have any mechanisms that would allow it to create anything? Like, it doesn't have hands or anything. Yeah. But beyond that, it doesn't have any mechanisms. Like, if you were to watch the production of a car being made, and you see all of those machines doing it, it's not like it has machines like those that are welding and putting things into place and doing all that jazz. It doesn't have anything like that. And he's like, oh, the master works in mysterious ways. And you're like, no! Well, that's not how it works!
A lot of it comes down... It's almost a jab at Descartes. Because it starts off with what's his name? Cutie... saying, I think, therefore I am.
I think, therefore I am.
Which, that whole sentence has 4 words that are problematic. I is very problematic. Think is very problematic. And am is very problematic. And really, if you cut it down to it, therefore is also problematic. Like, a lot of people, if you look at I think, therefore I am online or whatnot, it's like, is this a true statement? It's kind of like, it cannot be verified true statements because it has too many problems. It feels nice.
It does. Right.
It feels like one step away from a tautology, which is nice because tautologies are always true.
Okay.
But,
I said okay.
Well, if that is a teacup, that is a teacup. Is a true statement.
Right.
If that's an elephant, it is an elephant. It doesn't have any meaning.
No, it doesn't. Because even though it's a teacup, I could very well use it as a planter. I won't, but I could. Right.
But even the statement, if it's an elephant, is still true. It's a true statement. It just doesn't give you any information about the world.
If-then statement. But so, like, the thing about...
Well, let me finish.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, Descartes, his whole thing was to try and narrow down to the smallest piece of truth that he could find. Something absolutely true. Mm-hmm. Which, what for him was, I think, therefore I am. He wasn't able to see the flaws in that. And so he wanted to take that and recreate all of logic based off of that. And in reality... if you use that as an axiom, you can't really get any further.
Right, but that's...
But what Descartes did is he used that to prove the existence of God and how God does all these things and how, like, his whole system of logic after that involves God. Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, I studied Descartes. I don't really remember that. I mean, I studied Descartes back my freshman year in high school, college. So it's been a hot minute, because I took a philosophy of technology class and we studied Descartes.
You might have just studied the bits. I mean, because he's done a lot of good stuff, but yeah, like that was one of his logical. So I think this story was a jab at that of starting from I think therefore I am and ending up with a deity.
So that was another weird thing. Is that the other robots, I don't know what exactly QT said to the other robots to make them, because they literally get on their knees and pray to the master, and they think that QT is a prophet of sorts, And I'm just like, that's the part that gets me. Because these robots, in theory, have been given a set of programming rules and told, this is your job. Like, in a car manufacturing plant, this particular arm knows to move the door into this section, and then another robot, it holds it still, and then the other robot welds it into place onto the hinges and whatnot, and then it moves. But that's its job. It moves the door and holds it. So in theory, these robots are given a set task to do. Here's your station. Here's where you need to stay and make sure that these controls do these things. So how is it that another robot comes in and somewhat changes their programming because they all stop working, a problem in of itself, and go to pray to the master, who is just another computer, which doesn't even do anything even as advanced as they are.
Yeah.
It's a less advanced computer engine, and it's like, ugh. So it kind of like boggled my mind because I was like, I don't get it. Also, I had mentioned at this point that I'm like, okay, well, Donovan and Powell are obviously cursed in some manner because they always get the crappy robots. I know they're testing things out, but they always seem to get the crappy ones. And actually, in the next story, they mention, we are totally cursed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah, you would think that they could show the schematics for the converter to prove that as well, but...
Right? And, like, they at one point...
Well, I mean, a lot of this is to get you thinking, to try and find other solutions to the problems. It's not just, here's a problem, here's the solution.
No, I know, but I kept on thinking of all these other solutions, because Cutie...
Then Isaac did it right.
Well, fine, but it's still infuriating. Because Cutie is like, he's on this space station, and they've observed things through the telescope, so he doesn't believe, essentially, that there is a world beyond the station. Which, okay, fair enough. At one point in our human history, we believed that as well.
Yep.
Fair enough. But with all the evidence that is given to him to the contrary, including books, including watching Donovan and Powell put together another robot and initiate it and all that jazz, and it's just like, I don't understand why he's seeing all this evidence placed in front of him, and yet still he's denying it. Well, and it's not like in human history where the church, which was a huge power back in the day, did something like, put Galileo under home arrest because Galileo had the audacity to say, we're not the center of the solar system. Hell, we're not even the center of the universe. And all of these things that you say are flat and disc-like, they are spherical. And our world is round and not flat. And they charged him with heresy and put him put him under house arrest. And they did that because they didn't want people to question the church. They didn't want people to question their authority. So it's not even like you have somebody who's scared of losing the power that they have.
Yeah,
you just have this robot who...
We still have flat earthers.
Face value. Yeah, well, I have my opinion on those people, but I'm not going to do that because we're talking about iRobot, not that.
One of the things, you keep trying to relate artificial intelligence, like a strong AI or bold AI, or one of those, with like machines that are making cars, like the...
Well, it's hard for me in this time period to think beyond that. As much as I've read other speculative fiction and I enjoy things like the Terminator and that kind of stuff, it's hard to wrap my idea. But the Terminator doesn't have emotions. He has a set goal.
Right.
Go kill this kid. Well, in the first movie, go kill this woman. Then the second movie, go kill the kid. Kid wasn't supposed to exist.
The idea with AI, which is why a lot of people don't think that the AI revolution is going to be anything new, is going to be anything different from like the Industrial Revolution, is people tend to think that artificial intelligence is the same as industrialization, is just replacing... Oh, jeez.
Don't break anything.
I have a random strand that came from somewhere. But artificial intelligence is... Hey, get your nose out of there.
Hey.
Is inherently a very different thing from machines. And that's one of the big problems and questions with it. Is it's just inherently different, and basically the way to think about a strong AI is think about a human. So if we have, a human with a couple restrictions. So like if we have religious zealots nowadays, which I think we do, if we have flat earthers who just cannot be convinced otherwise, even though, you can
all
show
the evidence staring them in the face.
Exactly. It's like they cannot be convinced, they're set in their ways. They believe they're right, so they're going to ignore everything. You basically have to treat AI like that, like humans. So when this one goes wrong so far as to be kind of this religious zealot of his own,
it's convincing the other...
done the same way.
It is, but it's...
like a cult leader. Yeah, convincing others like a cult leader.
Right, but the thing is that with most humans, you're working on the same frequency. But QT is this more advanced, more developed robot than these lesser robots that he's working with. So it's weird to me that he's able to influence the lesser robots who don't have this kind of programming.
Well, they can still see him as authority.
Yes, that's
they
the
still
point.
have the same programming. It's all the positronic brain.
Right.
It's like a human brain. You can convince someone who's not as smart as you to believe in a lie.
I guess. But of course QT's not doing to be malicious or anything. But I don't know. It's just he's just really annoying.
Yes.
And when you read the book, because you can understand how frustrated the characters are getting, because you are frustrated because you're just like, oh my god, it's this very, very simple thing. For instance, like the reason I don't like Socrates. Socrates annoys me because he'll say something like, how Descartes says, well, I think, therefore I am. But Socrates will say, how do you know there's a plate here? Okay, how do you know your perception and everything isn't wrong? And it's to me, and this is just me, to me it's really, really annoying because it's here. I can feel it. If I drop it, there will be a resulting mess that I then have to clean up. It has a physical presence. It has a weight. It holds things that are now in my stomach, but it held them. And, it's there. And so...
But that's still problematic. Which is what Socrates was getting into, and others modern have gotten in there. So we cannot disprove solipsism. Which basically means absolutely everything is a lie. Your brain with inputs being fed into it, and everything else is lie. There is nothing anywhere.
No, there's nothing anywhere to disprove that we're not living in the Matrix.
The only thing that you can even kind of remotely prove is true is yourself. The problem, so we cannot disprove that. There's no way to prove solipsism wrong.
It's like that episode of Doctor Who we just watched.
However, solipsism doesn't actually do anything. You can't make testable predictions. You can't go from there. So while it is important to look at the other end, like, well, how minimum can we get? Because even your thoughts could just be not even you.
Well, no, there's a whole religion that I can't remember what it is or where it's from now, but the idea that the world in of itself is just the dream of some greater being, and when the being wakes up, all of this will go away and everything will disappear.
Right.
It's just a dream.
So yeah, with Socrates, that was definitely, he's annoying.
He's so annoying.
But
I wrote a whole paper about how annoying he was, and I got an A on that paper. They killed him because that's what I wrote my paper on. Why did they kill Socrates? Because he was being annoying, and he was teaching younger people to be annoying as well. Because he was killed for corrupting the youth. In other words, making them ask really dumb-ass questions. That's why they killed him. That was my whole paper. 7 pages of mirth. Just. But anyway.
So.
But yes, so that's why I liked Reason, because it was. Because it makes you do this. It makes you talk about these things that are infuriating, but they're fun to talk about. They're fun to argue back and forth about. So, what was your favorite short story?
Yeah, I actually didn't like Cutie's story just because he was so annoying.
Oh, so...
And his logic does not follow.
No.
Like, modern day, anybody who goes to a Philosophy 101 course, they already know you can't really go anywhere from I think, therefore I am.
Right.
It's like trying to find, well, what's the next step? There is no next step. So the fact that Cutie does all that, I only kind of liked it because it did seem to be like a jab at Descartes and people who hold him up as like, oh yeah, he was the best philosopher because he did I think, therefore I am, but then they didn't really see the other things he did.
Yeah.
Both positive and negative, because he's done like a lot of positive things as well.
Oh
yeah. My favorite is the lost one, Nestor, the little lost robot.
Little lost robot. I like that
because
one.
That's the one that really so that's one of my favorites. That's the one that really gets into problem solving.
Yes.
Like, we see some problem solving before then, but this one we have Dr. Calvin actually doing the problem solving. Mm-hmm. And setting up all these different tests, mm-hmm. and then the tests show nothing. Which is, as a programmer, very true to life. It's like, oh, okay, I think I can get this. Oh, that did nothing. And the problem with trying to test a learning algorithm, like an AI, is it might learn what you're doing and then predict what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And so you keep reading this, and it's almost like Death Note with how can they up the ante here? It's like, oh, this must be the last episode because there's no way for either Light or L to get over this. And then you watch the next episode, oh my god, they got over this and they upped the ante again. This was kind of like that, where it's like, you keep adding all these
factors and everything to try to figure out which robot is lying.
Yeah.
It's not working.
And then I did like the ending. It's just a standard.
Yeah, how she figured it out was good.
Yeah.
And I did like that.
And then, so the only problem I have with that one, which isn't really a problem, I still love that, is it wasn't really a problem caused by the 3 laws. It was a problem caused by humans manipulating the 3 laws to do something
that they
else and creating unexpected.
I have to say though, I was surprised when I heard that that the first law, the primary law, had been not removed but altered, and they weren't saying exactly why initially. I honest to goodness thought that they were creating a military force to kill other humans, because the person we meet is a general. So, and everything was this military type action kind of thing. So I really thought that they were trying to make an army.
Yeah.
To destroy enemies. But then I figured out what it is, and it's just the scientists need to go into a room that has a bit of gamma radiation. But according to Asimov, I don't think this is correct, but according to Asimov, humans can withstand gamma radiation for about half an hour.
Yeah. And then after that, they turn into the Hulk.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Or Mr. Fantastic, or the Invisible Woman, or the Thing.
Was that gamma radiation? I mean, they were some sort of solar
flare mixed
radiation.
With gamma radiation.
Yeah,
a lot of gamma stuff going around. Anyway, so the idea was that the robots saw it as a danger, because if you're there for longer than 30 minutes, then your cells start breaking down, or whatever he said. Again, I do not believe that is accurate. I don't think gamma radiation is something that humans are meant to be exposed to at all.
I mean, we're all exposed to some gamma radiation, but...
Not on the same level as
Not
what
as
he
the same level, yeah.
discusses in this. Again, we're talking about 1950s logic here, which in some areas was a little hard to get past. Like, it kept saying there were 3.5 billion people on Earth. And I'm like, dude, you are way off, even in the 1950s, okay?
Yeah.
And another thing, just a brief mention on the writing. It is not the easiest book to read. Not just because some of the subject matter can be challenging for individuals, it's just myself, but the way he writes, particularly the way Donovan and Powell speak, is really annoying. Like, it's definitely an older way that people used to talk back in the day. It was more, not flowery, but I guess more long-winded, and it's really annoying. But what really gets me is a lot of the robots say swell. They say it a lot. And
well, that's obviously a phrase that will never go out of style.
No, but it does, and it has. It's just
it's like cowabunga.
No. See, well, yeah, it is. You're right. It's like cowabunga, which went out of style shortly after Mikey overused it. Which was probably by episode 2. So that was just one of the things about the writing, which is a little on the dated side. But anyway, yeah. So the robots kept preventing the humans from going anywhere near the area where there was gamma radiation, and thus they couldn't complete the work that they needed to complete within that area. So they had the first law altered so that a robot cannot hurt or injure a human being, but they left out the part about or through inaction cause a human to come to harm. So by the robot not doing anything, then the human can be in the radiated area and do what he needs to do and then get back, because the robot will not go into the radiated area for fear that it will instantly get destroyed. Because apparently the gamma radiation, while it's totally fine for us humans, will instantly destroy the brain of the robot.
I mean...
Because that makes logical sense.
It does. I mean, depending on how the positronic brain was made.
Right, which they don't really go into because they even say in the book, they don't understand how it works.
Yeah. Well, we don't understand how the Go playing algorithm works.
Right, no, I get that. But,
and that is infinitely simpler than any of these robots.
True.
But, yeah, and then, I don't know.
I mean, my other favorite story
was with the mayor.
Well, no, with the lawyer who was running for mayor.
Who was running, that's what I meant.
And it's called Evidence. And what I like about this story, and then even kind of the story after it, although the story after it I found a little boring, but I only liked it because it had the same guy in it. It's the supposition that because no one has ever seen this mayor candidate eat or sleep or get so angry that he punches somebody in the face, because he's never been seen doing any of these things, they think maybe he's a robot. And they come up with, all these things, and they just want to test to see if he's a robot, but that's, infringing on, civil rights and stuff, and going into someone's personal life and all that, and they want to x-ray him, and they want to do all these things to figure out whether or not he is in fact a robot. And what's fun about this story is that you never get an answer.
Nope.
There is every conceivable reason given that, of course, he's a human. But on the other hand, it's never actually proven outright that he is. So maybe he is a robot. Maybe not. And my main thing was two things. One, they're like, well, if we x-ray him, then we can see whether or not he has regular bone structure, or if he is, in fact, a mechanoid with skin and whatnot on top of him.
Grafted, yeah.
Which they talk about how they can make. They never have made, but it can be done. And then, so they're trying to do all this stuff to see what he is, and he's wearing, I guess, some sort of a suit that prevents someone from taking an x-ray image of him. So, while there's doubt, it's never outright proven that he is or is not a robot. Yeah. Which I kind of liked. I was like,
and
that's
there's
cool.
Plenty of evidence both ways.
There's plenty of evidence both ways. Because at the end of the book, at the end of the story, someone from the Anti-Robot League, or whatever they're called, is goes up to him and is like, punch me. If you can punch me, then, obviously you are a human, blah, blah, blah. So he does punch him. But then later, it's postulated, well, now, what if that was just another robot?
Yeah.
What if he planned it?
Yeah.
And that was another robot, and a robot can punch another robot. Why not? So it was just kind of like, But here's the thing. In the next story, they talk about how he's gone from being mayor to being one of the world coordinators.
Yeah.
Over a series of years, one would think. So here's the main question. Did he age? And they never mention. They never mention if he got older. They mention how Dr. Calvin, she got older. Absolutely. They mention how she's gotten older and she still gets around and everything's fine, but she's a little bit wrinkled, she's a little bit more frail now, all the stuff, the general stuff that comes with age. They never mention whether or not he aged. No, never comes up.
Yeah. And you could imagine that in the postulation that he is a robot, his creator could have continued to do work on him and make him artificially age.
True.
Like add grayness, all this other stuff.
Add wrinkles and whatnot.
So it's totally feasible to make him still look the age. But I also like, because all of his stories about him talking and going around to all the other lesser coordinators, it's still done in a way that you're not supposed to know whether or not he was a robot.
Right. And he still very much acts pretty human. I mean, from what we've seen of the other robots, their only kind of defining feature that makes them robots is they all seem to say swell. And I don't think I ever hear him say swell, so, But it's a very fun story in that it's a mystery, but the mystery never gets solved.
Yeah, it's up for evidence
grabs.
is provided for you. And, I mean, that's how, a lot of trials happen, too. You're given a lot of evidence for both ways, and then you kind of have to...
You have to figure it out. Now, Dr. Calvin thinks he is.
Yeah.
But she's a robopsychologist. It's not like she has programming knowledge or the mechanical knowledge to know for certain. But, one of my thoughts was, well, why doesn't someone just try... I mean, in this day and age, I don't know what their medical plans are like. But you'd think a man in his 40s is probably going to regular visits for one reason or another, like a proctology exam and stuff like that, which I know guys don't like, but hey, you gotta get it done. I don't like going to the OBGYN, but I go every year. But you'd think there would be a medical record. So a medical record of, well, let's see, how's his blood pressure, how's his cholesterol, how...
But you could
how
also
are his joints holding up after all that, because he was in an accident. He was in a auto accident, and the theory is that the original guy, the original Steven, was in the auto accident and became damaged. Like his legs didn't work anymore, so he's in a wheelchair, and his face is disfigured and all that jazz. And he decided, well, I'll just make a robot version of myself to do all these things. But who was the medical examiner in charge of Steven then? Because somebody in the car crash that killed his wife, responding EMTs must have grabbed him, and there must be some record showing whether or not his legs were indeed broken to that extent. Aha! Aha!
But yeah, he could definitely have, at this point, a robot apologist or whatever, somebody who wants to see a robot in power basically be his medical examiner and do all the things.
Maybe, but again, I mean...
Because, you see that in this day and age with people in Congress or other places of power.
But they still have to undergo medical examination.
Right, but they choose who they go to, and that person lies for them.
If need be.
Yeah, and
but when it comes to electing an official, because bear in mind, robots are not allowed on any inhabited planets. They're not allowed on Earth.
Yeah.
They're not allowed anywhere where there are family colonies existing. Let's put it that way. So it would be of legal pertinence to know whether or not this individual is a robot.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, every human has the right to refuse, invasive, or refuse all of these things like invasive x-rays or all that kind of stuff. Well, not invasive,
right,
but...
Right. But I understand that. But I don't know, the part of my brain that either doesn't care enough or is more logical or I don't know. But, like, because my first thought while reading this story was, why not just submit to a blood test? And you can just get all these people off your back unless you are a robot.
Yeah.
In which case, no. And you'd come up with these reasons of, civilian rights and so on and so forth, invasion of personal data and whatnot. So
unless that is your platform.
Unless that is your platform, which is his platform.
Which is his platform, and somebody accusing him of being a robot is a great way to get attention on himself.
Yeah.
And as we know, media attention is a huge boost to gaining political power.
Yeah. It was actually funny because when they were talking about it, it was first met with laughter and skepticism and, oh, what a funny story.
Yeah.
And then as it went on and on, laughter got more forced or whatever as people began to wonder, oh, well, maybe. And that actually made me think of the past presidential election where everyone laughed. Oh, this television reality show host. Oh, that's hilarious. No, he's our president.
Yeah. So 66 years early basically predicted how humans would react.
Yeah, it's true. Because, he absolutely got the mayor vote, and then he went on to be voted the first world leader.
Also, when you have... Because, he gets up and punches either the human or the robot.
Whichever.
And Dr. Calvin, the foremost leader of robopsychology, says, like, on the record to a journalist, he's human. That's pretty much enough to prove that he's human, unless, you can actually get him to volunteer for more...
Right, to more tests and all that stuff. But of course, as we learn later on, well, not even later on, you kind of see it in Dr. Calvin. She doesn't particularly care for regular humanity. Mm-hmm. She likes robots because she finds them to be, on average, to be, what does she say? Not like good people, but decent beings or something like that. Because she's like, well, humans tend to not be so decent, which... take it or leave it. But, which is interesting, because when you think about it, if you think about the Liar short story, that gives her plenty of reason to hate robots in the Liar short story. But she still doesn't.
And I think a lot of that comes because she has such faith in the three laws. Mm-hmm. It's like, in Liar, he was... in theory, technically following the three laws, so he can be forgiven because he didn't really have a choice. Like, what robot...
didn't forgive him.
Well, not forgive him, but forgive robot kind because he didn't have a choice, as it were. Like, he had to say the things he did because of the first law.
Right. The desire to make sure that humans weren't hurt.
Yeah.
But they didn't go on to say physically hurt. Because Liar is a very interesting short story in which I thought, and I was talking to Paul about this earlier, I initially thought that because the robot, who is telepathic, I can read people's thoughts, was so interested in these fictional books that he was reading, he wanted something like a soap opera to act out around him. So I thought he was doing something out of personal amusement, which is a far darker way to look at it. But he was like, oh no, I don't want this individual's feelings to literally get hurt. So I'm going to say what they want to hear me say. But then when all three of them are in the same room and they're asking him the same question, it's just he couldn't answer because it would displease somebody. It would hurt somebody's feelings. Yeah. So he was like... To which hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, as we figure out at the end of this book. Or the end of that particular story. Which was mean. I thought it was kind of mean, but at the same time, she was
Yeah.
She was so mean. He deserved it. Chill, lady. But anyway.
So, yeah,
those are my
absolutely
favorite stories.
nothing to do with the movie.
Oh my god, nothing. Nothing. Absolutely not. No way.
No.
Like,
even the idea of a machine saying humans are the danger to themselves, you can almost see that in the final one where the machines are running the entire everything.
right.
And choosing which areas have a job shortage or
right,
surplus.
or job shortage or what have
Which they thought was an error with the machine, but then realized, oh no, that's part of where the machine is taking us, and there is no going back. But it's not like it was trying to get rid of humans, it was just trying to protect the most humans in the ways it knew how.
Right. Which I guess feeds into the idea in the movie where a curfew protocol was put in. I guess kind of leads to that. I mean, because the weird part about... Well, there are several weird things about the movie after having read the book. There's no Will Smith character.
No.
For one. And the Dr. Calvin that's in the book versus...
What was his name in the movie? Was it Sonny? No.
Sonny was the name of the robot.
Oh. Is Will Smith not a robot?
No.
Okay.
He has...
I didn't even watch the movie.
He had... Like, the big reveal in the movie at one point is that he has a prosthetic shoulder and arm, which is robotic in nature, but looks very human. Like, that's the big... And you think, oh my gosh, he's a robot. But no, he was involved in an accident, he lost his arm, and it was surgically reconstructed.
Yeah.
So, that's not really a big... Sorry if I spoiled it for you. But, I mean, so the only character who's actually... that I remember, that is actually in the movie, as well as the book, is Dr. Calvin.
But not the same character.
No, they try to make her the same, but... Because the Dr. Calvin in the book is... I would not consider her socially awkward. I would consider her very...
Stern.
Very stern, kind of like Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter. She's very strict and very, kind of looks like she's always sucking lemons or something. But not socially awkward.
Yeah.
Just always in control of the conversation, I would say. Cold, but not weird.
Yeah.
So, but in the movie, she's socially awkward.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem nearly as intelligent as the one in the book. Which was something that I was, like at the beginning, we talked about with the first short story, didn't paint women in the best light. And Dr. Calvin is referred to as being very cold and not very attractive, or she doesn't seem herself as attractive.
Which is another one of the big tropes. If you have an intelligent woman in a lot of
sci-fi and whatnot, then they're usually very
cold.
Yeah, very cold and stern, which is not a great
stereotype.
Stereotype or representation. But it's not like I didn't ever feel she embarrassed herself or did something to the point of like Gloria's mom,
right?
Who was terrible. She was always very intelligent. She always approached things with logic, and even though she was like a cold, woman who would smack your knuckles with a ruler or something.
And some truth in TV, as TV tropes would put it, you do sometimes see that in fields where it's male dominated. And a woman has to...
She's got to put herself out there. And unfortunately, it's still that way in science. Women are held to a far higher standard than men. Yeah. Because, well, they're women.
But yeah, I think like in a lot of ways we are getting better with women actually being allowed to have personalities if they're in a male-dominated field. But it's still a work in progress.
But it did make me think a little bit more about Tanda.
Yeah.
Because Tanda is intelligent, dangerous, but very bubbly and very attractive. So she is kind of an odd character in that timeline when Aspirin was writing. So it made me appreciate her more.
Yeah,
I'll give you that. It's not as if I've got great role models.
We need to start getting.
Wonder Woman was kind of cool. I like Wonder Woman. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of disappointed about this. Is like, so of course, male. I don't have to deal with a lot of this. But when I think about iRobot, I think about the robots and how the laws can go wrong. When I think about myth, I think about the wacky hijinks. When I think about Dragon's Egg, which we'll do at some point, I think about this insane, almost unthinkable world. And like Dragon's Egg was actually written by a scientist.
Yeah.
And like, so this world that develops that you would never really imagine. And that's like the cool thing. But again, male character. And you haven't read it yet, so I won't give any other spoilers. But like, so all of these things, like even Xanth, which the first like 2 or 3 books are very sexist. When I think about Xanth, I think about just how creative you can get when you only have one magical talent. And some talents have greater or lesser range of being able to be used, but the magician class level, like Sorceress Iris, you can use this talent in such insane different ways. Same like with One Piece, you see the fruit users. They only have one talent, as it were, which is that specific fruit.
Right.
But you can see them use it in very interesting ways. Like Gear 4th of Luffy. It's like, how does that have anything to do with rubber?
Right,
but it's these very creative ways of doing it. So like, I was thinking with a lot of these books that I introduced to this channel is like, oh, it's a good way to just get some books that I'm at least already familiar with that I like out. But then as we go, every episode is the women are written horribly, it's horribly sexist. And I'm like, come on, past. Give me something.
I know, Paul keeps recommending these books and I'm just like...
And then like, I don't want to come off as overly sexist.
Right, and it's not.
And I feel like I'm not, but it's like, all of my favorite books have this very sexist tendency. I'm like, grr.
He knows he's not sexist because he married a woman who's a better fighter than he is, faster than he is, and in some aspects more intelligent. So.
Absolutely.
So, he's good. But if you want a book where it's a main character who's a male and it's written by a male, but the side female characters are actually really great and you don't really think of them in terms of female, except for one, but they get into why, read The Martian by Andy Weir. Because, yes, read The Martian. Because The Martian has to deal with Mark Watney and his survival and everything, but it cuts back to his crew. The commander of his crew is a woman.
Yeah.
And one of the science officers is a woman. She's actually the tech officer. Her job is programming and working with computers, which is a fun swap. So, and she's very young and she's not military. The commander is actually an Air Force commander. So she's dealt with that stuff. But the other woman is strictly a scientist. So there are a few rules that the guys have to follow, but not without reason.
Right.
It's kind of the same idea as, well, you don't see women on submarines for reasons, which I won't get into because it's gross and not good. But read The Martian. The Martian is a great example of science that's up to date. No offense, Asimov. And because I feel like
we'll add The Martian to one of our lists because I need to reread that with that perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, one thing I was mentioning about Donovan and Powell when they get stuck on Mercury is it read The Martian probably most likely took influence from Asimov. Wouldn't surprise me. But the author did actually work at NASA for a time as an astrophysicist and all that jazz. Very cool. And a total complete nerd. There's a little interview at the end of it. Anyway, but like they're trying to do this problem solving aspect and they're not Mark Watney. Having read The Martian, it's like, oh, it's written so much better because Mark Watney is like the Martian MacGyver, and he works everything out, but he puts the science and the numbers into it, and that's what I love about The Martian, is it talks about the chemistry, it talks about the computer science, it talks about the physics, it talks about all this stuff, and the numbers are there. And as someone who's very number oriented in some things, it's very nice to have that. So if you haven't read The Martian, I highly recommend it. I heard the movie was good. I haven't seen it, but I do approve of Matt Damon being Mark Watney, because when I saw the preview, I was like, ooh, good choice.
So, Isaac Asimov was actually a professor of biochemistry.
Yeah.
So not programming, but there you go.
Which was kind of funny, because he mentioned a little bit of chemistry in that, and I tilted my head at one point. I don't remember exactly where, but I thought, that's not correct.
Oh yeah, he also... Oh yeah.
So it might be, I mean, chemistry you wouldn't think would be out of date, but because we can look at things on a subatomic level now, we understand a little bit more about chemistry now. And even though inorganic chemistry is the most annoying subject in the entire universe, I much prefer organic chemistry. It's still something that like I know a bit about. So with some of the things in this book, just knowing where we are now technologically in 2017, and they're talking about computers and robots from 2015 with these, what were they called? Vacuum things?
Vacuum tubes?
Vacuum tubes, which, if you're unfamiliar with vacuum tubes, they were used in old monitors for computers and televisions. You may notice these days that most of our televisions and monitors are flat, i.e., there are no more vacuum tubes. So, there's that little,
So yeah, this was something I was planning to look up beforehand. But, I'm looking up on the stream because we're professionals.
Yes, and we've been going for an hour and a half, so let's wrap it up.
Okay. Asimov considered himself a feminist even before women's liberation became a widespread movement. He argued that the issue of women's rights was closely connected to that of population control. Furthermore, he believed that homosexuality must be considered a moral right on population grounds, as must all consenting adult sexual activity that does not lead to reproduction. He issued many appeals for population control.
So he was more in line. So it's interesting, because his view of the women's rights and also homosexual rights had to do more with the idea that we should issue population control, which is really, really funny when you think about it, because he thought the population of the Earth at 1950 was 3.4 billion.
So, well,
he was wrong.
Well, he was, I guess, hoping that the population of the Earth would come down so that there would be more
resources.
Yeah, so I think that's where that line came from.
Okay. Which does make sense if he was concerned about population control. Because if you're not in the know, we're at about 8 billion at this point. Yeah. And we're still growing. Because, well, we're mammals and we have to reproduce and carry on.
And I do want to, at some point in the future, on this channel, do the Foundation series. That's going to be a tough one.
Hard. We do own it. It's just... And like I said, once I got into the books, the short stories, and like kind of kept reading without stopping, it got better. It got better because I didn't focus so much on the idea of women's roles, because Dr. Calvin is in a superior role. She's one of the executives. They consult her on certain things. It's not like she was downtrodden. I mean, yes, they thought, oh, well, she's this old crotchety lady, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, but when you see an old crotchety lady, you tend to think that way anyway. It doesn't really matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're younger than the old crotchety lady, to an old crotchety lady. Let's be honest. You say the same thing about old crotchety men now. So.
But it's also, again, he considered himself feminist, so... I haven't actually done a research paper on Isaac Asimov. But I can definitely see, especially back then, like way before where we are now, with the internet being so widespread, is like, how would I, as a white male, besides religion, basically the GOP ideal, how do I...
Besides religion, you mean besides really everything?
Well, I'm straight, I'm cis, I'm white, I'm male.
Okay.
Yeah, all the things that don't matter, but have been given...
Precedence. Well, not precedence,
power,
but yeah.
privilege and whatnot. And, so it's like, how would I... Especially before the internet, when I can go and, talk to support groups and be like, hey, here's my draft. Let's see what do you think about this? Because I don't want to do something overly wrong. How do I write from how do I write a woman? How do I write a Native American? That's something that with one of the reasons that I kind of don't want to do the Wizard's Trade book, like more things, is because I do have a Native American character in there.
Right.
And it's like, I'm having trouble not doing stereotypes, but I want to get like a few more drafts before I actually go and be like, hey, perspectives?
Well, and that's what you do. You do research.
Right, you do research.
You seek the opinion of people who would know.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah. And there's, especially nowadays, there's a lot of ways to get this.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's definitely one of those, it's almost a little better to just write what you know, which unfortunately when a majority of writers were male, you know, you get a lot of male perspectives.
Right.
And so like a lot of the main characters in Foundation, they're male. But it's like, is that because he was trying to be against women, or just I'm sticking to what I know? And it's one of those weird questions.
It is. But, you know, that makes me think about the little lost robot.
Yeah.
Because not only is Dr. Calvin, the one who figures out what to do, but when they're trying to test to see which robot is lying and his first directive is not complete, they have a person, they have a random guy sitting on this chair, and the idea is that this weight is going to drop down, and the robots, if they're following the first directive of, you know, through no inaction will you allow a human to come to harm, they should immediately want to save him. So in the final test that they do, it's not a man that's being put on the chair, it's her. Dr. Calvin says, I'm going to sit on the chair. And you don't really think about that, but for the 1950s, the idea of a woman putting herself in danger was not accepted.
Right.
But it's not like we got to see a scene where the men are arguing, oh no, I should do it, blah, blah, blah. We don't have that scene at all.
That's true.
And that actually...
That's actually a really good...
Now that I think about that, that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
That there's not the scene. Much like how in Wonder Woman, you know, they briefly mention, oh, it's a woman. They briefly, they mention it like once. And then it's like, yeah.
Especially nowadays, you have to mention that.
Well, because it was taking place in like the 1920s.
Yeah.
So
they did it. They got it over with.
They got it out of the way.
Moved on.
And it was, you're just like,
that's refreshing.
Yeah. So I didn't really think about that until just now.
Yeah, that's good.
About how there was not the discussion of, the woman shouldn't put herself in danger.
So, kind of what I'm leading towards is, you know, obviously we're about to wrap up.
Yeah.
The next few episodes, if I'm reading the calendar right, we did iRobot. We're going to do another One Piece. We're going to do another Dresden, and then this second Hitchhikers, just to keep up the series, the momentum on getting through some of these series we have.
Right.
And we haven't decided what's after that. I'm thinking maybe Dragon's Egg will look, but one of the things for these kind of odd one out, I want to start adding some modern female writers of science fiction. So we get modern science fiction instead of some out-of-date science fiction. And we need some more women perspective.
Yes.
And
you can't have me ranting and raving.
We almost did Mercy Thompson, which is definitely fantasy more than sci-fi.
It is.
It's really good.
It's urban fantasy. It's a lot of fun, but it is very... I will say this about the Mercy Thompson series, specifically Mercy Thompson, not the Alpha and Omega, but specifically Mercy Thompson, and I've said this before. It is a romance series. Cleverly hidden behind action and adventure and fantasy type thing.
Alpha and Omega is more the romance series.
It is, but so is Mercy Thompson. As I reread it.
Yes.
For like the third time, I'm reading through the series right now, and I'm noticing, I'm like, oh, yes, this is definitely. It's not quite the paperbacks that have the burly men who are only half dressed.
But it's inspired.
But you know, I mean, they're about werewolves who are lovely men who never age beyond 26, apparently. And you're kind of sitting there going...
So while that one is definitely from a female perspective, and I love it because...
She writes it, and she writes sometimes from the male's perspective,
and does well.
Yeah, from Adam's perspective. And in Alpha and Omega, she writes from Charles's perspective as well. And it's, I mean, I think it's done well. as a woman who has no insight into the male mind, really, except for the fact that I'm not I don't know how to complete that sentence.
Okay.
I'm not a girly girl, I guess. More a tomboyish.
I see.
Yeah.
Even though you're the one who wears the jeans in this relationship.
He's wearing jeans.
It's true. Today I'm wearing jeans.
Actually,
I think every show we've done, I've been wearing jeans.
Pretty sure I've been wearing jeans. They're pants. They fit. They feel nice.
I know.
They cover parts that you're not allowed to see.
So we're gonna. I'm reading a book. Ancillary Justice, right now, which is from Anne Nucky, I think her name is.
Right. I saw you buy it.
Already, it's really interesting and will give us a lot to talk to. So that's definitely going on our list pretty soon.
Okay. So we're going to do One Piece next week?
Yes, so next week is One Piece, the second arc.
Volume. But we'll be, for those of you who are not watching, which is everybody, we're going to be doing it on Sunday. My cousin's getting married on Saturday, so you will not see us. We will be getting ourselves all prettied up for my cousin's wedding. So, but yes, thank you for joining us. If you read I, Robot, I hope you at least got some interesting ideas out of it, even if you didn't particularly enjoy it, which I didn't.
And really, hopefully you came up with some solutions that Asimov didn't, because that's, like you did, because that's kind of the point is...
Get you thinking.
Here's a problem, here's one character or two characters' way of finding a solution, but that's not the only way.
Right, it's not the only solution. So, we hope you enjoyed our endless ranting.
It was definitely endless.
And if you're going to join us next week, join us on Sunday, and we will be talking...
8th of October.
The 8th, and we will be talking about...
the second arc of One Piece, which we haven't defined where it is.
Arc, or are we just going to do a second volume? I think we should do the volumes of the manga.
Well, the problem with the volumes is it cuts in the middle of the arc. And, like, you're like,
I know.
Well, now what happens?
But the problem is that there are arcs that are really, really long and arcs that are really short. It's uneven. We will figure it out. For now, let's just assume the first volume of the manga. Thank you and good night.
Second volume.
Yeah, that's... I don't know what I said. Second volume of the manga.
Because if we only do by volumes, it'll take us, like, years to get through. Whereas if we do arcs and shove some bigger arcs in... we'll get through a little bit faster.
This isn't One Piece, but this is Hellsing, and we should do Hellsing, because Hellsing's fun. Alright.
Okay.
But next week we're doing One Piece on Sunday.
Okay. Yes, join us. Bye. And...